Are you able to hear that?
I can hear the cat purring.
Yes, that's what I was... That's because he's perilously close to my head.
You know, we're about to get a cat. This is what I've got to look forward to.
You've been taken, and you've been taken good.
Well, thank you for that vote of confidence, Ed.
Well, no, it's in long. You're screwed. It's a long-term positive thing, but you're still basically owned now. Sorry.
Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for the 12th of November 2014, and joining me on this edition are Assistant Editor Steve Withers.
Ages 3 and up. It's on my box. I'm not supposed to be babysitting Princess Drool.
News Editor Mark Hodgkinson.
Wind the Frog.
Games Editor Mark Botwright.
Fastest knobs in the West.
And Audio Reviewer Ed Selley.
Nothing that concerns you, Spaceman. Just does toys.
Okay, and we're back for another podcast. It is the 12th of November. We're getting close to the middle of the month already. Where has this year gone? This time next year, I think we're going to be super excited, though, because we'll be getting ready for Episode 7. And just this week, the title for that film was announced. And the title being Mark. Either of you.
Don't ask me, because I don't know it. Something to do with the Force waking up. I know that.
Nice to see you're awake and paying attention. The proper title is somebody?
Force Awakens.
That's close.
Yeah.
Podcast episode 6. Mark Awakens.
So very tired.
Well, that was a Star Trek.
Yeah, listen, Star Trek, was it Star Trek 9? So very tired.
The thing is, if it's awakening, has it been asleep? And if it's been asleep, why? And what's it been doing? What's been going on? We're going to need another film to explain what's been going on before this film comes out.
Was it drunk? Had it been in a fight? Did it get out the right side of bed? Had it hit the snooze button 3 or 4 times?
Did Luke go for a very long sleep? Has he been a bit tired recently?
But I thought that the 3 terrible prequels had explained that it was just a parasite anyway. So all of these parasites have been asleep and have woken up en masse. Maybe they're like cicadas.
Very true. Very true. What were they called?
Midi-chlorians.
Yeah. So the midi-chlorians have all been asleep for the last 30 years.
Something like that.
It's interesting that the sort of when he announced it last week, the poster or sort of the graphic they created had Star Wars: The Force Awakens and no Episode 7, which is in line with the way the original films or posters work with Star Wars or Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. No episode this or that. So again, J.J. Abrams seems to be very much targeting the original trilogy as his touchstone and ignoring largely the prequels.
Well, wise approach. You?
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
Do we know if Harrison Ford's fixed yet?
Yeah, they finished shooting. They finished shooting last week.
Oh, blimey.
Well, not blimey, because they've only got 11, 12, 13 months to do all the effects in. They better get their fingers out.
There'll be somebody sitting with an Amstrad and a Sinclair ZX Spectrum. They'll get it done.
I mean, I have to say, the title doesn't change anything. I'm still almost completely indifferent. That doesn't mean to say I won't go and see it, but I just can't summon up any great.
I am deliberately not getting involved or interested or looking and this is a good example of why. I remember 99.
I care. I just care in the sense that I want to see where it's going. I'm not going to put too much hope on this one. I think it'll just kind of give us an idea of the direction that they're heading in. I think the problem is that there's never really been a kind of a concerted effort to just kind of leave Jedis aside for a bit. It's now kind of everything's about the Force, and I think it's the more they kind of explore that, the more it kind of turns it into a bit of a kind of kids franchise, because they're now kind of so powerful that it's just a case of really the Force Awakens, So what was it before?
I still think that there's some interesting stuff going on, because you've got this film coming out next year. Then the year after that, they're doing a standalone film, which, as Mark's just said, might not involve Jedi's or the Force or anything like that. Could be something to do with Boba Fett or whatever. So that shows potential for doing something in the Star Wars universe that isn't necessarily directly related to the Star Wars films, which I think would be quite good fun. And it's being directed by Gareth Edwards, who made Monsters and Godzilla. So there's potential there. Then we've got
So in
the
other
next
words,
Star...
it'd be about accountants or a long
The
time
accountant
ago
on
in a
the
galaxy,
Death Star.
Yeah, a long time ago
Yeah.
in a galaxy far, far away, we dealt with planning permission and boundary disputes. Or it'll
Tax and trade disputes, was it not?
That was the
that
first film.
that was
Already
really
had that.
exciting. Yeah,
But then the next year is a second is Episode VIII, which is being directed by and written by Ryan Johnson, who again is a good filmmaker. Did Looper and Brick and The Brothers Bloom.
But do you think that anyone's going to be, if they keep kind of switching things around like this, it's a nice idea to keep it fresh, but I just worry that each one's going to try and outdo the last, and in a sense almost kind of end up with the same story, you know, kind of, oh no, will the Jedis pull through? Yes, they will. You know, I really hope they will go off and do something, the kind of like a Rogues trilogy or something. Just stick to bounty hunters and that kind of thing. You know, just explore some of the other characters and then keep them
That's
fresh.
the idea. That is the plan. I mean, if you look at the way Marvel have planned out their movies, you know, and Disney to a large extent have left Marvel to their own devices to do what they want to do, and it looks like they're doing the same thing with Lucasfilm. You know, the Marvel movies have been largely very good, and they've gone in some interesting direction. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy, which has been the most successful film in the US so far this year, and the second most successful film worldwide, you know, it was a very different, total departure from what they've been doing previously, and I thought it was great fun. Really enjoyed it. They went very dark on Iron Man 3. Obviously, Avengers was a big hit. The Captain America movie.
Yeah.
Cylon.
Revenger.
My internet connection is totally buggered at the moment. All the time. I think they're in the middle of relaying all the cables for open reach.
So much pornography.
So it might be good in the near future, but at the moment it is very, very iffy.
I think that some of these Star Wars films should revisit. I don't know. There was ages ago. There was a cracked article: 6 Star Wars characters too retarded for film. I think it's time to visit some of these ones. There's something that looks like a cat, which is apparently a Jedi Master called Ikrit. Yeah, I think the movie world is calling out for that. There's a gay Hutt.
Oh yeah.
An animated talking mountain. That's a friend of the Ewoks. I mean, all of these things. The possibilities are endless. There's something that looks like Bucky O'Hare that was in all of the comics. So yeah, I mean, I think that each one of these people deserves their own film. And something called Uru, which is just a brain.
I think it should be a movie about the contractors on the Death Star.
Can't we just get by with sticking an exhaust port here? No one will notice.
Maybe you could deal with you could do one of the films on just an entire squadron of TIE fighters dealing with basically the fact that they appear to be pretty much wiped out every time that they go anywhere near an opponent, and just dealing with the psychological loss of being completely eradicated every time you take off.
Well, what happened was when they did the Clone Wars, they didn't go to Specsavers before they cloned the guy, so.
Yeah.
So they all have an eye defect, which means that they can never hit the target.
Yeah, and all the pilots came from someone with an in-ear infection.
And the guy that they used as the donor for the clones was the henchman from the A-Team.
That would explain a lot, certainly.
So Hodgie still not interested?
No. Well, I am. Yeah, I like stuff Star Wars, but I just failed to get excited by any of this so far. Maybe as it gets closer, it'll pique my interest a little bit more. But as it stands, I'm just very much wait and see. I'm not going to get caught up in it all.
It's interesting that we're talking about Episode 7 here. It doesn't come out till end of next year. There's a big final film of a big trilogy happening in about 4 weeks from now. Steve?
12th of December it opens.
Yeah, and nobody's interested.
I could not.
It's not even on the running order.
What's the film?
The Hobbit.
Oh right.
Yeah.
God. I thought it was going to be like 20 questions there for a second.
You're blowing out the microphone again, Mark Hodge.
Yeah, stop breathing, Hodge.
Yeah,
Stopped.
Yeah, but it is interesting that you got the final Hobbit film happening, and seems to be very little interest in that one. Twitter abuzz with Episode 7 news, yet there was a big release of the trailer. Was it end of last week for the final big trailer for this movie? And I've seen very little marketing, very little interest.
I just can't get excited in any way, shape, or form. I've still not seen any of them.
I saw the first 3/4 of the first movie. I saw it at a high frame rate, which was annoying me. But no, also was that annoying me. The sound kept dropping out every time it reached a certain level. It was like some kind of clipping device came in and would switch the audio off.
Excellent. Yeah, that always adds to the immersive nature of film, I find. But no, I haven't seen any of them, and neither am I. I mean, considering that I think both the first two are actually on Netflix, if I could be asked. So it's not like there's any particular difficulty in getting hold of them, but I still can't be bothered. Sorry.
Is this our enthusiasm special?
The team vie to work out what they could give less of a shit about. But equally, obviously films are taking a back seat at the moment. I mean, MasterChef is back on. The Professionals. Bloody love that.
With Bodie and Doyle.
yeah, well, that could have interesting ramifications.
Jump over the bonnet of a car with a wok in hand.
But no, I love that programme. I love it. I mean, to be honest, this is my favourite bit, when they've still got people with ideas well above their actual levels of competence. So, yeah, I mean, the moment that you actually... It's like the X Factor. Not that I watch that, but if you're going to watch any of it, you watch it whilst the delusional types are involved. You don't actually want people with any degree of competence. That doesn't make for good television. So, although I still think that my idea for Farm Foods MasterChef is still... I think that's got winner written all over it, really.
What was this idea?
Well, it would work exactly like MasterChef does at the moment, but they can only use ingredients from the UK's far from leading frozen food retailer.
Okay, and let's move on then. So, competition. We're not doing Farm Foods. We're not getting sponsored by Farm Foods. We're not doing.
I don't want to be sponsored by Farm Foods.
I thought the idea was. I thought you were literally talking farm food, as in they had to butcher it themselves.
Well, that would make it for equally compelling television.
Come in covered in blood and crying.
Oh, no. Tomorrow night, the skills test is to prep a woodcock for cooking.
For an exam?
Yeah, that's right. Well, no, that involves taking large amounts of feathers off and cutting bits of it off. Apparently, that's quite something to watch. So that promises to be quite entertaining.
How big is a woodcock?
Not very.
No, they're not, are they? It's not like
No, and game birds are notoriously tricky to prep, especially if you're trying to keep the skin on, because the easiest thing to do is skin them. Dexter.
Hodge should know.
all I've done is plucked a pheasant. I've never really done anything else.
I'm not a pheasant plucker.
I'm not that keen on it.
I'm a pheasant plucker's son.
Yes.
I'll keep on plucking pheasants till the pheasant plucking's done.
Wisely taken at slow speed there.
And sober.
Yeah, well, that's helping as well, isn't it?
Right, competition time. We have almost the same competitions as we did on last week's podcast, but there is a new introduction here. There's two new Blu-rays that you can win: Holy Grail and Meaning of Life, Monty Python Classics.
Certainly, Holy Grail is. I'm not so sure about Meaning of Life.
I think Meaning of Life's underrated. It's got some great songs.
It's got some funny bits in it, but it's got some shit bits too. I mean, Mr. Creosote.
That was always Python, though, wasn't it? It was more like
but I think Holy Grail's fairly consistently funny.
Yeah, I agree. But
some bits aren't so good, but it's still good prizes. I mean, if you're a Monty Python fan, and I think there's plenty of them out there, they're both great films. It's a pity it doesn't include Life of Brian. You'd have to have all three.
Once again, we're really selling this again, aren't we? We pretty much hit the ground stumbling a couple of weeks ago, where it's like, yeah, these films are all right.
You get about X amount from cash exchange for these.
It was when we started off with the Danny Boyle box set, but they weren't the good Danny Boyle films.
Asterisk goods to the value of.
No cash alternative.
Here's what you would have won.
Speedboat.
It was always a speedboat, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. If you won, you got the speedboat, and if you didn't win, they showed you a car, which went back to the dealership after the end of each. I mean, don't get you dodged a bullet, because from memory it was a Nova Saloon.
Yeah, it was something like that, or it was an Eldest caravan.
Oh yes, of course. I forget that.
Is that the one where they always used to have someone like with a barbecue set to the side of it, pretending to be cooking on it?
Yeah.
Was that the Generation game?
It's Generation game.
And Big Break.
Yes.
Generation game is coming back.
With the Miranda Hart, isn't it?
Oh, gee, that's I used to like Generation Game. Won't be watching this one.
They should just bring Brucey back.
On the plus side, she is finishing Miranda, the TV series, so that's good news all round.
I think Mr. Forsyth can only be used sparingly. He has to be kept on ice now.
I know, but it's like a new twist on the Deadpool idea. You can bet by the hour.
You have to do it live then, wouldn't it? It have to be live, totally live. Add to the suspense.
Good game. I'm amazed that Big Break hasn't made a comeback, to be fair. I mean, that's low budget. I mean, obviously, the fact it was done by Jim Davidson.
That's what I'm saying. It'll have to be the UKIP sponsored version. Jim Davidson. Right, so that's the Monty Python. Guardians of the Galaxy, NVIDIA Shield Gaming Tablet, and Battlestar Galactica, all prizes that can be won. Go and win them. Right, so let's get back to some of the subject matter that we're supposed to speak about on the podcast, and let's get serious for a moment here, because Steve had a bloke round last week to nail some stuff, and you're going to give us a report.
Yeah, I finally got around to putting my overhead speakers up in the home cinema, 2 at the front, 2 at the rear. And so I could actually listen to Dolby Atmos from the receivers that I was reviewing, which is the Marantz SR7009, the Pioneer SC LX58, and the Yamaha RX A2040. I've got the Dolby Atmos demo disc, which I believe you also have, Phil. And I have, for my sins, I have Transformers Age of Extinction.
Yay.
Yeah. But anyway, I got a chance to finally listen to some Atmos in the home, and I've got to say, really, really impressed. I thought particularly the demo disc, because it obviously has these nice little trailers and things designed to really show off the format. The sense of immersion is quite staggering, and it really had a wonderfully open, detailed sound with loads of you could really pinpoint sounds moving around the room in a way that I'd never been experienced before. And I was using a 5.1.4 setup, so standard five surround speakers, 1 subwoofer and then 4 overheads. I learned quickly to set it up so that my surround speakers were small and not large, because otherwise a shed load of bass gets sent through them. It was really good. I mean, that one, the trailer, Phil, that which is like a forest and there's a thunderstorm and that sort of stuff. That sounded amazing.
Awaken, I think it's called.
Awaken is called, that's right, yeah, Awaken.
Oh, Christ, I wonder if that's what the Force has been watching. Anyway, yeah, you say that. What you got to bear in mind, and I know you're bearing this in mind because we've had this conversation, Steve, but obviously this is a demo disc. It is over the top in terms of using the object-based effects. Because I haven't got an Atmos receiver here yet, I haven't put speakers up yet. I do have the demo disc. I played these trailers, and even on a 5.1 system, you could notice they were well over the top in terms of how they're mixed and how the spatial effects are used. Because even on a 5.1 system, you could pinpoint where most things were.
Yeah, I mean, but I also had Transformers, and in that one, interestingly,
because that's very unlikely to be over the top at all.
Well, most of it is over the top, yeah.
Based on realism.
The opening scene involves these spaceships flying over your head, and the sounds do go over your head, which was quite cool. But there was some stuff where they were in the cinema towards the beginning, and Mark Wahlberg's character is buying some old junk and cinema projectors and that sort of stuff. And they're in the auditorium, and the echoes and the sense of spatial awareness was quite pronounced, and you really felt like you were in a big empty room.
So you really felt like you were in a cinema. In a cinema. In a cinema.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the fourth wall disappearing out the...
I was genuine. I sort of got my girlfriend and sat down and said, listen to this, and she was going, that's incredible.
Is everybody aware that Steve now has a girlfriend? This is the third podcast in a row that he's mentioned it now.
I'm on a bet to see if I can put a comment in every podcast.
If her surname was Netflix, this would be
perfect. They get her to change the name by default. So but I mean, I thought it'd be interesting to get someone who wasn't aware of Atmos at all at that point and then demonstrate it. And she did say she thought it sounded incredible, and she's seen plenty of well mixed movies in that home cinema.
There was a pause there at the end of that sentence.
After the install, joking aside, I mean, this is struggling to be relevant for possibly the only point in this podcast. So, how easy was the process of getting the 4 speakers up with a trained professional assisting? Are you happy with the result aesthetically, and are you happy to sit underneath them without constantly looking up?
it was not. It was relatively easy once we got the wood. Because you needed pieces of. Let me start that again. Once you bought 2 planks of wood and got them up on the ceiling and then attached the speakers, it was pretty straightforward. And now that I finished all the sort of cosmetic bits, it looks very nice.
But it's just in a black room, Steve, isn't it? So it's not like a living room or anything, it's just a black hole.
Well, no, it would never work in a living room. It would look ridiculous. Then you didn't. I think any kind of realistically, in any normal living environment, people are going to have to use the upward firing speakers that Dolby are pushing, which wouldn't work in my home cinema to a degree because there's a lot of absorption on the, there's velvet all over the walls and ceilings, and it would be difficult to bounce sounds off the ceiling in that room. But in the average living room, obviously, that would be the preferred approach. I think most people probably wouldn't want speakers attached to their ceilings. I quite like them. I think it looks really cool. but that's just me.
Looks like an 80s nightclub, does it, with the speaker?
It does actually. Yeah.
Get a glitter
ball in there. But no, I mean, I'd heard demos, obviously, of Atmos in the cinema and at Dolby's offices previously. And I'd heard that trailer, for example, Amaze. I'd heard that, Awaken. I'd heard that on, in a full cinema and also in a home cinema setup at Dolby's offices, and it sounded equally as impressive at home. So that made me quite happy that I was listening to something that I recognised and remembered.
We see the thing that you, I remember you banging on about at the time after that you had that demo at Dolby's offices, was the fact that the speakers go right up to the screen in an Atmos setup. And that gives you the effect that sound does surround you because it's going right up to the speakers. Speakers are going right up to the screen, whereas in a normal cinema or in any other layout, the surround speakers are quite far down the room. They're not up by the screen. So you'd sometimes get the illusion would be lost if something went off screen right, and then it wouldn't go to the side of you. It would suddenly be around the back of you, depending on where your rear speakers were positioned. I have to say, on that demo disc, in a 5.1 system, and I'm using dipoles for surround, I have to say that effect was there. I noticed it in that demo piece, even though
you
I don't
noticed
have
that you lost the sound, or it was quite seamless.
That it was actually quite seamless. And obviously they're using object-based mixing techniques there, and it was just a 5.1 system, but obviously it's based on a 5.1 system. Dolby Atmos, the same as Aura's based on the 5.1 or 7.1 platform. So that was interesting. It was interesting to see just how open and spacious the mix was, even on a 5.1 system.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you mentioned that to me, I think on Friday. So I did actually play that disc using a non-Atmos setup. And you're right. I mean, it does sound really good. In the Atmos setup as well, there's a bit where it does a 360 pan around the room, and it was pretty seamless. I mean, like you were saying, I was using it in a 5.1.4 setup, so I was only using fronts and then surrounds just to the side and slightly behind the listening position. And the same with the rear pan too, behind me. I mean, when it was very smooth, and you didn't feel like you were missing the 7 point, the speakers that would be the 7, in a 7.1 system, those speakers weren't being used, but I didn't notice them not being there, which was impressive. I've got to say, I was, pleasantly surprised and really quite pleased with the results. I was getting quite excited actually on Sunday when I was messing around with it.
Were you getting wood?
Not in a sexual way. The hope now is what we really need are some more. Obviously, we need more content.
Content is going to be king. Yeah.
Is king. Yeah, and at the moment we've got Transformers, which I could do without.
Well, don't worry. Expendables is next. So.
Expendables is coming out. Yeah, but I'd love to sort of hear Gravity in Atmos. That would be interesting because that was a very directional soundtrack anyway. So it'd be really interesting to see how that works as an Atmos soundtrack. But I think there's now 200 Atmos movies available, or have been made at least. So there's plenty of content for the studios to choose from if they decide to support the format and put discs out. I mean, at the moment it's only Paramount. I would. It's going to come down to content at the end, and also I suppose what happens with the competing formats. Because
I think the other positive that we have to make here, Stephen, is a point that I've been trying to labour, is that even if you don't have the speakers on the ceiling, even if you don't go the full hog, from what we've heard from down-mixed Atmos stuff, that certainly on a 5.1 system, there is an element of improvement there in the way that the movie is mixed.
again, as you pointed out, a demo and a trailer. Obviously, everything's maxed out, and they're trying to really show off the format. So it depends. It's going to come down to ultimately what the sound designers do and how well it's reproduced on disc, even in 5.1. But I think that it shows the real potential. It's certainly, I've watched a lot of films at home. I've heard some very good soundtracks, and I was sitting there thinking, like, this is really quite impressive, and I do feel totally immersed in this environment, and in a way that perhaps I hadn't felt before. And might be slightly placebo effect on my part, and wanted to make the most of it. I just spent 2 days getting speakers on the ceiling.
Yeah, you don't want to do all that and then sit down and think,
yeah, this is rubbish. I'd have been really upset if that had been the case. But I got to say, it was good. And what was interesting was obviously, I've got 3 different receivers, but all of them, and you can choose different layouts. So I mean, they're all 9-channel amps. So that's why I went for 5.1.4. But you could also do 9.1.2 normal front speakers, and then sort of speakers sort of halfway between the front speakers and the side speakers, and then obviously the rear speakers as well, which obviously would help even more with that sense of seamless panning. And then 2 speakers above, or you could do 7.1.4, but obviously you'd need at this point to add an additional 2 channels amplification. But given there were 9 channels on the receivers, I went for 5.1.4, and I was with all 3 of them, and I thought they all performed extremely well with the limited amount of content I currently got. I thought of all of them, I was really impressed with the performance of the Marantz SR799, which uses Odyssey Multi-Q XT32. Room EQ, and I thought that one sounded particularly impressive, although all 3 were good. As I said, one of the things I quickly learned was when setting up the rear speakers, make sure you set them as small and not big, because they shove bass through everything. They were kind of rattling and really making some unusual noises at one point in that Awaken trailer, particularly when the thunder goes off all around the room. But otherwise, I mean, these are the first receivers on the market with some of the first receivers on the market, at least with Atmos, and certainly it's been well reproduced, and all 3 of them were very impressive.
One of the things that really impressed us when we went to Galaxy Studios to see Oro 3D was the upmixing capabilities of Oro.
Yes.
Is Dolby Atmos, does it have that capability on the receivers you're looking at? No,
there isn't any sort of Dolbyizing feature on these receivers, at least, and I haven't been aware of any. There've been no demos or mentions of it from Dolby themselves.
I think the Yamaha's got a proprietary system.
Yeah, but it's not Dolby. That you can do. You can do the Yamaha, DSP, where they'll start using the height speakers and this sort of stuff. But in terms of Dolby itself, it doesn't have a feature that Oro does do. What are they called? The Oralizer?
Oralizer, right? Yeah.
I mean, where they will take even down to, and we heard this, didn't we, Phil? A mono source.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's something that we've heard for the last 20 years from the likes of Yamaha and that, DSP effects and all the rest of it. When you hear the Oro thing, it absolutely blew me away. I've never had anything like it, because it was so realistic from a mono source. You thought that had been recorded in stereo. Because it's doing things, it's not just adding an echo, like most of these cinema features or surround features. You switch them on and it just gives you an echo effect. This actually works in the timing domain, so it tries to work out sound reflections through really advanced algorithms, and it just sounds really natural, and it sounds like it's a stereo mix. I mean, no word or lie, we had to pick our jaws up off the floor.
Yeah. I mean, we're pretty jaded, all right? I mean, we've seen and heard a lot of stuff over the years, but both of us sat there with our mouths agape going like that. That's really impressive. I've got to say, the application of technology these days in terms of the audio side of things is becoming more and more impressive. As an example, on Friday I was given a demonstration of a new wireless speaker, just a little tiny box, probably about 4 inches by 4 inches, by a company called Mass Fidelity. And the sound it was producing, the sense of stereo separation it was delivering, was quite staggering. I honestly, at one point, I had it sat on top of the center speaker in the home cinema, and if I closed my eyes and no one had told me that box was there, I'd have just assumed my 2 floor standards were working. It was really that impressive, and I was going, how would you do this? And don't say it's magic, because that's not going to wash. But they were saying, they were using what they call wave field synthesis, and it was quite amazing, the sense of stereo separation. Also, you could stand up and move around either side, and if you moved to the left, you could still hear the right stereo sound. It wasn't everything was just falling down to one side or the other. really quite impressive use of technology, and you've seen this more and more now. And you know, some of it might well be psychoacoustic, and it might. I mean, again, with Dolby and their upward firing speakers, they're not just bouncing sounds off the scene; they're also claiming to using a certain amount of like psychoacoustic technology in order to make this sense of overhead sound created from upward firing speakers. And you know, I know what Ed's opinion on this is, but certainly, you know, some of the applications that are being applied here really are very, very impressive.
Well, yeah, it's you know, it's easy to be sniffy about it, but the name Muso that I tested comparatively recently using similar processing, and the thing is that I'm not wildly keen on the concept of it when you can hear the processing at work, but when it's done properly, you don't. It just sounds oddly big from an oddly spacious from a single point, and it doesn't surprise me to learn that there's other people doing it with equal skill. And as I say, when you encounter it being done properly, it is quite something. The problem is when you encounter it not being done properly, it can often sound like a bag of spanners.
Can I ask a layman's question?
Go for it.
With regards to this technology of kind of bouncing sounds around the room, how much does the room play a part in that? I mean, when you've demoed this, obviously, you know...
Massive.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, which is the technology can be there, but in the average living room, I mean, suppose you've got lots of kind of sofas and
well, I mean, if you think about the average living room, though, and you think about looking up at the average ceiling, most of them are a flat space where you could bounce sound. You know, there's very few that will have material, or there's very few that have really high ceilings, like a barn conversion. It wouldn't work in a barn conversion because you got 50 feet to the ceiling. But in a normal UK living room, I think if you're averaging it, Mark, then I think the vast majority will all be similar in the fact that they have a boarded ceiling that's plastered, and in those circumstances, the speaker would work. It's when you start getting into high ceilings, vaulted ceilings, loft conversions, barn conversions, that's where it starts to fall on its face, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. You've heard them.
No, that would be absolutely correct. It's interesting when the guys from Mass Fidelity were describing how the speaker works, and I was thinking, well, that's all well and good in my lounge, which is quite bright and it's got lots of reflective surfaces, and I'm sure it'll work very effectively in there. I said, well, what about in the home cinema, which is far more dampened and a less lively sound? And they said, no, it'll work in there too. And we played it in the lounge first, where it worked very well, and then to my surprise, it was equally as effective in the home cinema. So I think that there are technologies that can work better in less ideal environments. But you're right, Phil, if it's a big barn conversion with a very high ceiling, those upward firing speakers are not going to work properly.
Yeah,
because they've got nothing to bounce off of. It's just too far away. You know, you can only do so much with technology. You can't. It isn't ultimately, at the end of the day, actually magic.
No, it's trying to solve a problem of putting speakers on the ceiling, because again, you're the only person that can really answer this, Steve, because you're the only person out of all of us that's experimented with this. But upward firing versus actually having a speaker up there. I mean, I imagine having a speaker actually up there works better. It gives you a better sense of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to have a demo of both overhead and upward firing speakers at Dolby's offices, and I won't lie that I thought the upward firing speakers were surprisingly effective, but. And at times you did struggle thinking, is that coming from above? But when they actually did play stuff using the overhead speakers themselves, there was you definitely got a greater sense of overhead sound. I mean, they work to a degree, and they're surprisingly effective. But I still think, if you're an enthusiast and you want to go the full hog and you really want to get the full Atmos experience, you really need to actually put speakers above you, if you can, obviously.
Would something like that musical fidelity, could it be adapted for Atmos, so you could have like one like a unit, as it were, and it could project 4 speakers outwards in sort of a convincing way? Might that be an answer? Like a single speaker that projects 4 ways. That can be applying that kind of technology to the solution of an Atmos.
Put one on the ceiling.
I think you're starting to talk about physics now, and we all know that physics has no part in anything that we do. So let's move on.
We'll come back to physics later when we get to.
We choose not to believe in gravity.
We all know it's magic. So, Steve, Dolby Atmos, obviously magic. You're quite impressed with it.
Yeah. Bottom line, I was very impressed with it. I'm looking forward to hopefully getting some more Blu-rays released and see what they sound like. But so far, so very good.
Okay, we were going to talk about smart TVs. We're going to have to do that next week because we're running fast out of time. But upcoming reviews, what do you have, Mark? I
have. Next one up will be EE-TV, which is EE's TV box as a rival to Sky, etc. But it's only available to EE broadband customers. Really good though. More to come. Probably when hopefully when the podcast is published, the review will be up. I've got the Kindle Fire TV, Amazon Fire TV coming this week. I've got a Samsung H6500 TV and LG's Music Flow wireless music system, which has been up and running all weekend, and that's pretty good too. So is that LG's Sonos, is it? LG's Sonos, yeah. Very good. LG's Sonos. It's I've reviewed the Samsung M7 system, which is... well, you see, I was playing devil's advocate there, but it just shows you how much of a lead Sonos has, that people always refer to it as, like Sonos. Yeah, it very much like Sonos. And as soon as you say, I like Sonos, people know what you're talking about. Yeah. And it's good. Well, I got it working. Are they the L3, the L5 and the L7? It's H3, H5, H7. Compared to Samsung and Samsung M5, M3, M5, and M7. It's uncanny, and even the little box you attach to your router, it's identical. So it's identical in every way. But I could say the LG sound better to me than the Samsung equivalent. It's that magic again, Mark. Yeah, it's a bit of magic, bit of LG magic. Bit of music flow, right? And Steve, you've got at last, hopefully, a flagship Panasonic turning up this month. Yeah, the AX902, which I got a demo of at their offices a couple of weeks ago, should be coming in for review, I guess, towards the end of this month. And on Thursday, I'll be getting LG, speaking of LG, their latest OLED TV. So I'm quite looking forward to that. I was to ask you, is that the cheapy one? Is that the $2,000 one? No, the $2,000 one's the one we've already reviewed, the one we reviewed at the beginning of the year. Not the 4K one that's supposed to be coming out soon. You see, there's that many OLED TVs supposedly coming from LG. I get confused. Yeah. Anyway, this is the EC930, which is the full HD OLED TV. I believe the price is $3,999 new. I'm sure that will drop pretty quickly after Christmas. And given how impressed I was with the previous, the one that is currently available for $2,999, by the way. So if you're looking for a bargain, I'd recommend it highly. Got a reference badge. I'm expecting good things from this again. And this is the newer version, so you've got the same kind of benefits of OLED, but you've also got things like WebOS built into it and that kind of stuff. So it should be a very impressive TV. Ed, you doing anything? Yeah, probably nearer the end of the month. But no, two I've explained. I'm been working on the Tidal copy. I'm actually waiting on having a proper chat with someone from Tidal about how certain processes work, to make sure that the review is actually jam-packed with useful information. There will be some Australian earphones, because I feel that Australia has been cruelly underrepresented in what we've covered so far. And very much towards the end of the month, there will be a small get-together of less expensive AV receivers. Withers is busy doing the champagne stuff. I shall be doing something a little bit more beer budget. And seeing what you get at that sort of price point. Okay. Is there anything games-wise? How do you mean? Do you know what's coming up? I don't know what's happened to you, but you've gone really weird. Speak again. Hello? Yeah. You've got a sort of farting follow crackle. All right. I think he's in the last Hobbit movie as well. Do you want to drop me and bring me back or something? Yeah, we're going to sort Mark out. We'll be back in a second with games news. Right, games news. First of all, you have a podcast coming up this week. Yes, Games Poddy this week. We should be recording it tomorrow, so fingers crossed we can get through a lot of stuff. Mass Effect 4, concept art, and possibility of an HD remake of the original trilogy. Also, Sony have finally rolled out their share play feature, and there's been a kind of minor controversy about some games blocking it. Drive Club,
the launch woes of that. Grand Theft Auto 5, you've got a first-person shooter mode, and obviously they've released some videos showing the HD makeover, and that's starting to tempt people. And no doubt we'll also be discussing what we've reviewed, so Sunset Overdrive. Hopefully Leon's played a lot of Call of Duty Advanced Warfare by that point, and if anyone's managed to make it out to the shops on that day, Halo Master Chief Collection.
Pending a visit to the shop. I like that.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Pending anyone wanting to actually go stand and queue up. Although it might come in the post, never know.
Why don't you just get it on Amazon?
Yeah, I suppose you could. That's not as fun.
Well, I, for one, am looking forward to it.
Said with enthusiasm.
Well, I don't say anything with enthusiasm, so why?
I'm looking forward to Grand Theft Auto 5 on the PS4.
I was happy to let it slide by, but then they showed just how much of a makeover it's had, and it looks fantastic.
Yeah, it does. That video, that comparison video you mean?
Yeah.
It does look amazing, doesn't it?
Yeah, the trees and all the kind of added detail, because it was one of the best looking games of the last generation anyway. And I think I, along with a lot of other kind of cynical people, just assumed that it was just another, give it a little bit of a polish and then just kind of throw it out there and you'll make money. But, certainly the first-person shooter mode.
Yeah, that first-person mode looks incredibly good.
Yeah, it really does. It's the kind of thing that you'd think if someone kind of put that on, say, like a modded version on PC or something, it would look slightly clunky. But, certainly in the driving sections as well, that should be spectacular, because some of the best moments in the game for me were kind of going down a mountainside on a motorbike and kind of flying 60 feet in the air. And the thought of doing that from a first-person perspective, yeah, it's definitely tempting me.
It might be too real. You might have an episode.
I think I'll be able to see where the lines between reality and fiction are there.
Obviously, I will wait to the podcast. I have to say, Drive Club had me umming and ahhing about inevitably buying another PlayStation to gather dust, like I have with the previous three. Is it to say, brief synopsis? Is it to say it doesn't actually work at the moment, or it's just got some just stuff which is an annoyance rather than it's actually KO'd?
I think it's kind of a mix of both. It's some people are reporting kind of bigger connectivity problems, as is always the case, than others. We had this with Battlefield 4, where some people said, "Oh, it's fine." The occasional dropout. Others said they just couldn't connect. But it does seem like the central club feature and various problems with kind of syncing up are there fairly consistently. So it's just one of those kind of sad launches where you just think they've obviously tried to make sure that it was ready, but you can never fully account for what will happen with everyone's network, and something obviously was wrong there. And it's just kind of killed this idea that, should we say, Sony was on an equal footing with Microsoft when it comes to the online multiplayer experience. I think it's probably pushed a few people towards an Xbox One, because people always kind of had that view, which was, well, if you're going to play multiplayer, you stick with Microsoft, and they were kind of touting dedicated servers and the like for this generation. But the silver lining with Drive Club is the fact that they've, depending on how you look at it, it's either silver lining or a kick in the nuts, but they've said that the PlayStation Plus edition is basically on hold for the moment. Now, that's obviously poor for anyone who's just kind of redeemed a subscription voucher for the next few months or something, assuming that this was going to come out. But it does give them a second chance to kind of almost make that first impression, where if you give it away free, people will play it. So if it releases in 6 months and it's perfect, and everyone's just says, well, I'll download it anyway, then there's a chance that, should we say, the franchise isn't dead before it's even started, because anyone will play something if it's free and it looks good enough, which this does. So, even people who were slightly, cynical about it and saying that, Sony have completely cocked up, you'll still download it and give it a try if you own the console and you've got that subscription anyway.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we shall see.
Other than that, just quick plug. Manny should have his Bayonetta 2 review up for the time that this goes out, and Leon's still deep into Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, and hopefully he'll be starting a rolling review for Master Chief Collection as well.
And of course, you've got your Games podcast as well.
Yes, indeed, Games Poddy as well.
Okay, so is that the games news?
That is.
So moving on, it's movie news, and the age-old question is, what's at the cinema, Steve?
Well, this week, one of the biggest releases of the year, the long-awaited new film from Christopher Nolan, Interstellar, starring Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway. And I have to say that in a film about the effects of relativity, Nolan has proved that he can make 3 hours feel like about 3 days. It may well be a noble effort. It may have, aspiration to be an intelligent film about realistic space travel, relativity, and black holes and wormholes, etc. But somewhere along the line, someone forgot to make it fun. It's quite boring at times, and I'm into space. I like space movies, and I'm into space travel, and I've been a fan of it since I was a kid. So I'm basically his target market. And even I was sitting there thinking, for the first 45 minutes, they don't even get off Earth. They're just wandering around in dust bowls and mucking about in cornfields, and you're thinking, get on with it, get into space. And then they finally do get into space, and then they
can get back to Earth.
Well, yeah, quite. Go back to Earth. It does the same thing as 2000. It desperately wants to be 2001, and yet somehow 2001 is infinitely more exciting. But like 2001, it's unlike Gravity as well. They treat it realistically. So in space, there's no sound. So there's no sound in the outside shots. You only get sound when you're inside a spaceship, which is fine. But it's got this awful, awful score. It seems to be using a giant church organ half the time that is just grating. And every time, in action scenes that are sort of scored to this terrible score, just they feel like it's going on in slow motion. Nolan's never been particularly good at doing action scenes per se, and even the stuff that's meant to be exciting just comes across as somewhat deathly dull. It's got stuff. Also for a film that's meant to be about realism, there are some stuff in it. Even I, with my limited abilities, limited knowledge of relativity, knows bollocks. So they go to a planet that's very close to a black hole, and therefore apparently 1 hour on the planet is 7 years on Earth. Well, for that to happen, you have to be so close to the black hole that you'd be crushed by the gravity, and you wouldn't be able to escape because you'd have to be going faster than light. So that's just silly. And even if that was true, knowing that fact, why would they go to that planet when there were two others they could go to that wouldn't have the same problems? It just seemed ludicrous when there were, it's a desperate race to save mankind. The Dark Knight's a great film. The Dark Knight Rises was cobblers, and everyone knows that. And this isn't going to be the big hit everyone's hoping it's going to be. I don't think. I think it's going to lose out on word of mouth. I think it's trying to be too clever for a mass audience, but it's not being entertaining enough. If you look at Inception, that was quite a clever film, but it was also quite entertaining. This is relatively clever, and it thinks it's clever, but I don't think it's entertaining enough.
Inception's popcorn munching sci-fi, though, isn't it?
Yeah, that's great.
It's perfect at that, But it just, I never fully understand when people say, but it's terribly complex and it's thought provoking. It's not. It's good genre sci-fi.
It's relatively for a big budget summer movie. It is reasonably intelligent. It certainly has more of it makes you think a bit more than your average blockbuster would. You haven't seen Transformers: Age of Extinction if you want to see just how dumb something can actually be. So the effects are fantastic. Obviously, I'd recommend if you're going to go and see Interstellar, go and see it on the biggest screen you can, because a lot of it was shot with, as we were saying last week, shot with IMAX screens and 65mm. So yeah, I'm sure it does look spectacular at times, but there's just too much in it where you think that's just stupid, and that's not as clever as it thinks it is. And also, I think Ed's wife, who is quite knowledgeable in astrophysics, has pointed out that a lot of the so-called science is wrong as well.
Yeah, it boils down to something called the accretion disk around the black hole, which is treated with scant respect, as I understand it in the film. Put it like this: the function, the accretion disk is gas spinning around the before it then circles the plug hole and goes in, and it gets hot enough to emit X-rays. So it's not something that anything made by man is going to stand up to particularly well. And I understand that they play fast and loose with this.
They do. They do represent a black hole quite well, because the thing about a black hole is it's obviously not a hole. It's a three-dimensional object, so it's more like a black sphere with an accretion disk actually orbiting around it. But obviously the accretion disk on the far side of the black hole, as you're looking at it, is obviously being distorted by space-time. So they have probably done the most realistic representation of a black hole seen in a film to date, which is good. Same with the wormhole. Again, it's three-dimensional. It's not just a hole, it's a three-dimensional object. That's really good too. But Yeah, well, this is it, and don't get me wrong, the film will stop at various times whilst this kind of stuff is explained to the characters in the film, and then by virtue of that to the audience. It's just I was disappointed, and I've been looking forward to this film for 2 years. So for me, it was a big disappointment.
But do you think a significant amount of people are going to actually care about any of that stuff?
Pass, but I don't. But it strikes me that it doesn't quite sit happily for either people that are really committed to, hardcore science fiction, and people who are looking for an evening's entertainment. It doesn't seem. Yeah. It's trying to appeal to both, and has limited appeal to as a result of that to anybody. It's just, let's face it. For me, I differ very strongly from my wife here. If I want to see science fiction, it's much more in the Inception, or let's face it, even when we get down to it, the Star Trek sort of stuff. None of this pissing about black holes business. Let's just go faster than the speed of light, because otherwise we can't go anywhere useful. Boff. Thank you very much. Job done. And I don't know. I think it finds itself in a very awkward position. And it's 3 and a bit hours long or whatever, which is
it's 3 hours long. Yeah, I mean, it's just, in order to be realistic, you have to accept the fact that in order to get from the Earth to Saturn, which is where the wormhole appears, that they're going to go through. I mean, that takes 2 years. And it felt like the film took 2 years to get there. They also go to suspend animation for these long parts of these journeys, but there's no explanation as to how that's achieved. It's just like they're in a tank of water, which seems a bit strange, and drown.
Yeah, they'd go all wrinkly.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, I was thinking the skin's going to be terrible when you get out of that after like 2 years of it.
Okay, well,
all I can say is I thought that Kaz's review, which went up over a week ago now, was a bit generous by giving it 9 out of 10. I certainly wouldn't have called it a 9 out of 10 movie. I'd said maybe a 7. I admire the ambition, and it looks quite impressive at times, and the effects are very impressive, and the cast is very good. It falls short of its goal, and it just isn't an entertaining. If you look at Armageddon is scientific bollocks, but it is wildly entertaining movie. This is like watching a science report done badly. So, I'd say a 7 out of 10 at best.
I hate Armageddon.
I love Armageddon. I mean, who wouldn't want to send Bruce Willis to get the world's best deep core oil driller and send him to that asteroid?
I'd like to fire Ben Affleck into an asteroid.
I think
just train astronauts.
But he was. The only problem is he survived.
Yeah.
The thing is that Armageddon benefited from the fact that Deep Impact came out at the same time,
which was rubbish.
Which was the
one that was trying to be serious and boring and worthy.
Let's face it. If we are threatened with extinction, we might as well have a laugh.
Yeah.
And I want Bruce Willis up there, saving the world.
They should have had him just wearing a vest anyway.
With a helmet. Like
I'm too old for this asteroid.
Like the bloke in the moon in Futurama.
Well, we've been coming up with some quotes there. Obviously, we always start the podcast with quotes. And quite an interesting thing in the Telegraph. Was it this week or last week, Steve, that this article?
Last week, just after we recorded last week's podcast. This was
typically
Telegraph.
That's
the news cycle hasn't adjusted to the fact that we are now the focal point of the nation.
Yeah, and we record on a Monday afternoon, so all news has to happen before Monday afternoon.
Yeah, remember that next time, royal babies.
So
anyway, this article, Steve.
It basically listed. There was a poll asking the British populace what their favourite film quotes were, and the top 10 film quotes of all time, according to this poll, according to the average British punter. Number 1. No, so I'll do it in reverse order.
Actually, before we do that, we have to be scientific about everything that we do, Steve. So how many people were in the poll?
2,500 votes. I think statistically that's considered a big enough poll.
It is, yeah. I think 1,000 is considered a big enough group for populace. Okay, you may go ahead. You may proceed. Okay.
This is according to this poll, the top 10 film quotes of all time. Number 10, and I'm sure Mark Hodgkinson will agree with me here. I'm also, by the way, my box set finally arrived today. But number 10, we want the finest wines available to humanity. We want them here, and we want them now. From With Now 9.
Is that even the best quote in With Now?
No, it's not. But I'm just glad to see a quote from Widnow and I make the top 10. That's
I would imagine
that,
that the vast majority of quotes have swearing in them, Mark.
Yes, that's the problem with Widnow and I.
That's true.
It's one of the things I noticed straight away.
Are you a sponge or a stone? That would work. Number 9, Nobody's Perfect, of course, from Something Like It Hot, the last line of Something Like It Hot, which is very funny. Number 8, another one I'm glad to see here, All Those Moments We Lost in Time, like Tears and Rain from Blade Runner. Number 7, very funny, Infamy, they've all got it, Infamy, from Carry On Cleo. Number 6, Frankly My Dear, I Don't Give a Damn, from Gone with the Wind. And number 5, and I'm sure you'll like this one, Phil, You're Gonna Need a Bigger Boat, from Jaws.
Which was a complete ad-lib.
Yeah, not even in the script. So a nice one, Roy Scheider. Number 4, He's Not the Messiah, He's Just a Very Naughty Boy, from Life of Brian, the disc that we're not giving away in the competition. Number 3, Say Hello to My Little Friend. Actually, Mark Botwright should do this because he does quite a good Al Pacino.
I refuse.
Spirit of the podcast.
From Scarface. Number 2, You're Only Supposed to Blow the Bloody Doors Off. Obviously, Michael Caine in The Italian Job. And number 1, To Infinity and Beyond, from Toy Story.
Really? To Infinity and Beyond?
Well, I guess a few kids must have answered that. But actually, Toy Story's nearly 20 years old now, isn't it? Which is making me feel really quite old.
But you are really
Yeah, there's a reason.
Yeah. All right, but I don't want to be reminded of that fact.
Did you see that link that was posted? And it was in the general chat for that You're Getting Old website.
No.
Where you slap your birthday in. And then it gives you a very depressing statistic about something that you assumed happened a million years ago actually happened closer to the date of your birth than the present. In my case, it was the publishing of the Diary of Anne Frank. Happened closer to when I was born than now, which is f***ing depressing.
Ed, I can probably say that the outbreak of World War One is closer. World War Two was closer to my
no, you were right the first time.
I think that was an interesting slip of the tongue there.
Yeah.
Methuselah. So, yeah. But I can't even remember what we were talking about now.
That's film quotes.
All right, your most favourite film quotes, just to wrap up. So let's go to Mark Botwright first.
What, from this list or just
anything what you think should be in there?
I like the end of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. For a moment there, I thought we were in trouble.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Hodge?
It's from Widnow and I, so it is probably unbroadcastable, but it starts, Monty, you terrible beat.
Okay. Mr. Selley?
Don't know. Possibly Apocalypse Now. Never Get Out of the Boat. It just holds up so well as an actual metaphor for my entire existence.
Well, I mean, the one I'd like to use as mine, I can't use it because it's full of the C words, so I'll just say, it's shite being Scottish, Tommy. Steve?
I'm going to go for the same film as Ed. I'm going to go for Apocalypse Now and say, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. It's the smell of victory.
Smells like victory.
Oh, sorry, Ed. Smells like victory.
It's so much your favourite, you don't know it.
It was more the first part than the second part, anyway. All right, okay. In that case, then I'll go for The Thing, and you're going to have to get the bleeping machine out again.
No,
with this one.
you only get one. No, you only get one. I'm afraid.
I'm going for that one too, which is the bit when they see the head with the legs, and then he goes, "You got to be fucking kidding."
I do like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back though.
That's got some Marty quotes.
And after it's done, you say, "Oh, what a lovely tea party."
You never.
What was it? The Will Ferrell one, you know. Evil man, only on the outside.
And just very quickly to wrap up this week, Blu-rays that are coming out, we don't need a full review, Steve, so just tell us which one you would pick out of 22 Jump Street, How to Train Your Dragon 2, or Transformers Age of Extinction in Dolby Atmos.
22 Jump Street. Very funny.
Okay, so that is it for the podcast this week. My thanks to Steve Withers.
That isn't flying, that's falling with style.
Mark Hodgkinson.
Wait a minute, I just lit a rocket. Rockets explode.
Mark Botwright.
The claw chooses who will go and who will stay.
And Ed Selley.
I have to, really. To infinity and beyond.
Oh, jeez. Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark avforums.com for latest reviews, news and video, and please leave us a rating on iTunes if you enjoyed the show. It helps the ratings on the podcast, it helps us climb the charts, and it helps us get more people, more listeners to come and listen to the podcast. I'm Phil Hinton, thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next Wednesday.
Surprised no one went with "How dare you open a spaceman's helmet on an uncharted planet?"
I didn't get that.
I think that might have been a line in Interstellar.
Interstellar.